Hello, this is Lynette Strentz, Superintendent of Education. I want to give a brief overview of the accreditation process. But first, I want to thank you, board members, for your commitment to our students. You are a valuable part of the success of our schools in the Dakotas. I know accreditation can seem daunting, so I'm hoping that this will help ease your fears and help you better understand that the process is not scary. In fact, my whole goal in this presentation is to try to take the scary out of what accreditation is. I know in years past that sometimes when you had a site visit, that people would come in and just seem to look at every inch of the school trying to find fault. Now, they probably weren't trying to do that, but maybe it felt that way. But the process has changed over the years, just like everything else has changed. Back in the day, everything had to be written out by hand, and then someone would come and type it, and then it would be submitted, and there was lots of labor involved. But now everything is just about digital. The self-study that you submit is online. We do our writing with the visiting committee online, and then that's submitted online. However, with an online platform, sometimes there can be strange little glitches. So I do have some tips at the end of the presentation to help. But first, I want to go through a little bit of the philosophy, because sometimes that philosophy of why we do accreditation is lost. It's really connected to our journey to excellence, which is our overall value piece of Adventist education through the North American Division. So it is school improvement, and it's in a continuous process. It's not a one and done. It's meant to be that we're thinking as a board, we've had a few action plans from the last accreditation. We've looked at those, we've addressed those, and then we've looked at what are the other things that we want to move forward with. Are we focusing on marketing? Are we looking at the deferred maintenance on our building to take care of the property that has been acquired and is part of us? And then how are we moving through that process in those 6 years? When is it part of our board conversation? Is a conversation that we're always looking to improve? And what is our next step? Sometimes we have those conversations, but we are not always tracking them. And part of this process to help us track those as a school, rather than wait to do something every 6 years. So it's changing a little bit of how we have looked at accreditation. It is just one little marker, that accreditation piece. It's like we have a perspective of others coming to look at what we're doing, and it's really looking at the story you are telling about your school. We have a story to tell. There are great things that happen in our schools, and during the accreditation process, we get to celebrate with the school the amazing things that are happening, and to showcase that in a snapshot of time. But it is just one piece of it. That school improvement conversation is so important for you as a board to continue to have those conversations and document them. So it's the process of looking at the quality through the self-study, and then that peer review. And then certification comes at the end, that the school is meeting those established standards of quality, and that they are achieving those objectives that have been set aside. So evaluation is the process, and then accreditation is the certification that you are given at the end. The true purpose of accreditation is to develop and perpetuate the quality education that we have. We have a wonderful product. We see the difference that happens in students' lives when they have a teacher who has 180 days of evangelism that happens within that classroom, where students are seeing who God is through their teacher and through others that come into their classroom. And it's interwoven into every part of their day. And what a wonderful opportunity to see lives change through that process. So the purpose clarifies the school's mission. Are we always bringing everything back to that mission in what we are doing? It gives a progress report, and it helps to continue looking forward for improvement. It also involves everyone that is within your school, because you ask for parent input, you ask for student input, and it forms that basis for the accreditation term that you'll be given. So there is a 3-step process. You have the self-evaluation, which is your self-study report. You have the peer evaluation, which is the visiting team report. And then you have that continuous school improvement, which is the implementation of plans over time. And that continuous school improvement is a living document. It used to be that we would have stacks of individual action plans that we could check off and say, okay, we've done that. We have updated some part of the physical plan and checked that off as one of our action plans with accreditation. And sometimes schools would have 10 to 15 action plans they would submit, and they were like a checklist, one and done. This is looking at the school and its connection to mission. And yes, we need to keep the physical plant in good repair because we've been given it and entrusted it. That's part of our stewardship, but that it's also connected with student safety. We want a safe place for our teachers and our families and our students. So combining those where you may have an action step built into that continuous school improvement, but then you're outlining how that's going to be carried out. That student safety and the physical plant is always going to be there. So those action steps are going to change over time as you work through them. So who should be involved? Everybody's involved. In a small school, it's everyone. Everybody plays a part, and your support of the teacher is very helpful because there's a big chunk that the teacher needs to do. That is her responsibility. There's a lot of details that she'll need to provide, but board members are also playing integral parts. Students answer surveys. Parents answer surveys, getting input. And then after the visit, you still have responsibilities. You're going to review what the visiting report was, and then determine your timeline for completing those recommendations and incorporating those within your continuous improvement plan. So how can you help with that self-study? Well, part of our suggestion for school boards is that they form smaller committees and just look at those standards and answer them in groups of 1 or 2, and then come back and report to the larger committee. Another way is to help with passing out those surveys, completing them, and then also being part of that board review of the finished self-study report. Once all of those standards are answered, then the self-study needs to be reviewed by the board and approved before it goes to the conference office. Everyone needs to read through it and agree with what is being shared, that this is an accurate picture of our school right now and where we have grown, the things that are going very, very well, and the areas where we need to improve, as well as what our next steps are. So in this instrument, it's a narrative format. You have the standard, and then you'll have indicators. So we're accountable to the standards, and then we are basing that school improvement planning within those action plans. I'll go into this in a little bit when I show you some pictures of what it looks like online, but it does not have to be a long narrative. There are some of the indicators that repeat because this is the same form that is used for all the schools across the North American division. So a large school, an academy, or a small school all have the same form. So there are some things for a small school you are able to adapt and adjust for. So the components that are part of this self-study is the school profile, which has to do with the finances, the student data, and just information about the school. There is a school history that needs to be included in that. You have a progress report. You have the NAD-wide standards. There are surveys. In the resources, there's parent surveys and student surveys that can be sent out. And you want to include the continuous improvement plan. And there's a template for that. And I also have an example of a small school template that they were willing to share with others that may be helpful for you to look at. It is posted in our teacher portal. So the standards are ideals that are very specific. They're obtainable, they're observable, and they're measurable, which means there is evidence that shows this, connected with the standards. And the evidence is then linked with those standards. There are 9 standards, and you will provide evidence for each of those 9 standards. One of the easiest ways for small schools to do that is to simply have a file folder that has 1 through 9, and you're putting that evidence in there physically. If you have someone that has the time to upload those things online, you can upload the evidence into Accreditation. But we have found that it is a little bit easier to just have that actual physical file there, and you're putting that physical evidence within, whether it's the school handbook, Whether it's the minutes, having a binder of the minutes from your board meetings, having a binder of the financial statements, having some student evidence, having evidence of your curriculum and other plans like your emergency procedures, those types of things would be what you put into the file. And that's just an easy way that as you move forward, you're keeping that file. And then over the next 6 years, you're adding to it, where we're not all waiting until that 6th year to prep for accreditation. So a paragraph or two is all you need to do. Sometimes it may take you a couple paragraphs to answer to give verification of the reasons you evaluated the standard and indicators. You are going to write every single indicator within a standard, but you can just write 1 or 2 paragraphs in response summary of those indicators. I'll say for some, it's easier to give a 1-sentence response to every indicator, but it is okay to just do a summary with the standard. But you're summarizing the indicators that are listed. The one that sometimes is a little bit easier to answer each indicator is Standard 6, which has the most indicators in it. And it has 4 different sections and is dealing a lot with the facility, the building, technology. It just has a lot packed into that standard. So the school continuous improvement plan is 3 to 5 big picture items that are connected with your mission. They're directly linked with that, and they are where you want to improve. So do you want to improve the communication that happens? Well, that communication is also linked with marketing and growing our school. So we can combine that into one overarching thought of that big picture, connecting with our community to intentionally grow our school, but having that big idea. And then there are small action steps that are built in to reach that goal. Your plan needs to be approved by the board along with the self-study when you are finished with it. It becomes the marching orders for improvement for the school, for the board, and the school personnel. So when the visiting team comes, they're going to review your self-study document. They're going to read through what you have shared about your school in your story. They're going to look for that evidence. Sometimes when they look for the evidence, it's a conversation with the school board chair. Sometimes it's a conversation with your treasurer or whoever does the billing. Sometimes it's a conversation with the teacher to ask the question, asking if they're looking for some type of evidence, and then that visiting team summarizes what they see and also summarizes what you have shared. They highlight what is going very well for the school, and then if there are any recommendation that the team feels will help the school move toward the next step of growth for them, they will give those recommendations. Recommendations are different for every school depending on what that school needs, and then there's a recommendation of term that the team will vote on and share. In determining that recommended term of accreditation, the visiting team assesses the degree to which the school is fulfilling its mission, meeting standards of quality, and developing sound plans for school improvement. I know this writing is quite small on the screen, but as you can see, there are several options the team can choose. The 6-year clear or 6-year status is not a recommendation that is made anymore, because with the turnover of teachers and just the changes with school, it is very helpful for the conference to, even though they're aware and available, but to do a check-in at a 3-year cycle. And so the top level of accreditation that is available for a school now is a 6-year status with a 3-year mid-cycle. And it's simply a check to see, okay, you have identified some improvement plans. How are you working on those? And how are you working through those recommendations? It's a very, very quick visit by me as a superintendent. There can be a 6-year with a 2-4, where I as superintendent will come on the 2nd year and the 4th year. There could be probation or accreditation denied. So the visiting team will be chaired by Carissa Carr from the MAUC. I will also be on the committee along with several other people. Please note that we will be there to validate the school and the self-study report of the program and facilities, not to evaluate the teacher or teachers. We're not looking at the teaching. We are simply really looking at that self-study and looking for the evidence of that self-study. So you all are the coordinating committee. And so it's a good idea that you develop small committees to look at different parts of the school and to answer those standards, to break up some of that work. So it's not just the teacher that's answering all 9 standards. Remember, they can be short, brief narrative summaries that you are writing about your school. So the self-study is housed in what is called the NAD Accreditation Accreditrack system. I can add other people if you want more than just the teacher to have access on Accreditrack. But you are going to develop your list of who's on the committee that will be working on this. And I suggest that really only one person input things into Accreditrack. So work in your committees and look at the standards and answer them online, the indicators, but to write your narrative, I would do it in a Word document or Google document, and then copy and paste it into Accreditrack so that you don't lose something by chance, as it is an online platform. These are the 9 standards. We have the standard for philosophy and mission. How is your school aligned with the philosophy and mission? Is it visible around your school? Do your students know it? Do your parents know it? Is it lived within your school? Standards 2, 3, and 4 have to do with what happens in the classroom. So typically, these are much easier for the teacher to write or work on, especially with a small school. What is the curriculum, instruction, and assessment, and those intertwine together. Then Standard 5 has to do with sustainable leadership, and that is the leadership of the school. Standard 6 has to do with the environment, has to do a lot with the physical building. That one has the largest amount of indicators in it. Standard 7 has to do with professional learning, very much related to the teacher. And then Standard 8 is communication and collaboration. Finally, Standard 9 is the one for school improvement. What progress have you made since the last accreditation? So being able to go back and look at what those recommendations were is helpful, and then to build where you're going to from this point in time, and what are the next steps you are going to take. This is what it's going to look like. You'll have the standard listed. It's just a very brief statement. All of them are not long, but then you will have indicators. So for this one, there are 6 different indicators. By the way, this paper and pencil icon that's next to the cursor is your writing tool. You will click on that to type in your answers. If you are simply going to summarize your answer to all of these indicators, you can put your paragraph or 2 under this top one here under the standard. Now, when I said some people find it easier to write 1 or 2 sentences in response, then you go into each indicator and write something for each. It's totally dependent on what you feel comfortable doing. Either one is fine. But it is definitely possible to summarize all of the different indicators up in the standard and put it up at the top. So your next steps are to be appointing committees to work on each of those standards. You are going to complete all of the sections of the self-study. You're going to answer the indicators and rate them. You're going to give a short narrative response to the standard summarizing how your school is doing with those indicators. You will be doing the parents and student surveys and create a school continuous improvement plan. And you will need to submit the completed self-study that has been reviewed and voted by the board to the conference 2 months before your scheduled visit date. I will then pass it on to the union. During the visiting team visit, it is helpful for a few people to be available. It is helpful to have the board chair there to answer any questions if needed. But it can also be set up as a scheduled time that works for your schedule. And then we will have an exit report, usually around 4 p.m. We will finalize on the time, but it's usually after school in case any board members have students that are in school, and for the teacher to be there. But we will give an exit report to the board or those that are able to be there. And then after the visit, you do have responsibility still. You are going to review what the visiting team report was and then determine your timeline for completing those recommendations and incorporating those within your continuous improvement plan. I want to show you what the Accreditrack website looks like. Once you log in, this is what will show up for your school. You want to click on Self-Study. This will show you all of the standards. The little pencil and paper icon is your friend. Click on that to see the standard you want to look at. Once you click on a standard, it will show you the standard at the top, and then all of the indicators of that standard underneath it. Then you will need to go into each indicator to rate it. But here at the top under the standard is where you will put in your summary paragraph. You use the pencil and paper tool to get to the following window. So here's where you would enter in the summary paragraph. However, I would suggest copying and pasting from a Word or Google document, and make sure you hit save. Let's go back one page and click on the pencil and paper icon next to the indicator so I can show you what the ratings look like. For the ratings, 4 is highly effective. Evidence provides strong support to the exceptional implementation of the indicator or standard. 3 is effective evidence provides sufficient support for the implementation of the indicator or standard. And 2 is somewhat effective. And 1 is ineffective. There is no support for that indicator or standard. So like I said, every indicator has a spot for school comments right under the ratings. Either one is fine. So that is a process in a nutshell. So here are the key takeaways. Number 1, create committees to divvy up the work. Number 2, consider using a Google Share folder or document so everything is in one place and can be easily accessed by all committee members. 3, have only one person copy and paste responses into the Accreditation self-study website. Be sure to hit save each time you insert a piece, or your responses will not be there. Number 4, everything should be submitted to the conference 60 days before your scheduled visit. And number 5, consult the Standards for Accreditation document PDF. As you go through the accreditation process, there are several resources that may be helpful. I would recommend downloading the accreditation PDF. Your teacher can access it on the conference teacher portal, or you can look it up online. There's also a small schools plan and sample that I referenced earlier. Your teacher can also access that through the conference teacher portal, and you can always feel free to contact me. My email and my cell phone are listed. Thank you so much for your dedication to your school. I look forward to seeing you soon.